All right. Hello, Avian Science. I see a lot of people in the chat have found the lizard. That's good. You guys did a lot better than my morning class who really kind of struggled with it. If you haven't seen it, it's right there. This is a Twitter game. So if you're on Twitter, you can follow Afro Herper, and she posts pictures every Wednesday. This is one of the easier ones. They do get certainly a lot harder than this. Okay. Announcements. So as usual, there's a quiz and some short answer questions that are due before midnight on Sunday. Next week, we're going to have a review quiz, which is similar to the quizzes you've been having, but they're a little bit longer. And they are cumulative, which means that this one coming up next week will cover all of the material from the beginning of the semester through the end of today's lecture. So there's more information on it. When we wrapped up last time, we were talking about feeding small birds. We're going to see, it's an out of class quiz, Taylor. We're all of our assignments are going to be done outside of class on your own time, unless you choose to do a presentation for your project. We're going to see that this kind of diet is very similar for a lot of different birds. So there's going to be a base of pellets or diets. You can add wild seeds from grasses and flowers, as long as there's no pesticides or herbicides. That's just really important for anything you collect and use for your birds. So no insecticides, no herbicides. If you've got a lawn service, you can't use anything from your lawn. Fruits, we talked a lot about a bunch of different fruits. Strawberries are very popular with songbirds, anything in the berry family. Vegetables, I mentioned leafy greens, broccoli, they love broccoli, carrots, sprouts, green beans are fine. Birdie bread, which you need to make yourself. Don't buy whole grain bread and feed it to your birds. In the US, our whole grain bread has a lot of sugar in it, and that's not good for your birds. And the occasional mealworm. So that's what we were talking about when we wrapped up last time. So I want to also list things you should never feed your bird. And this is true for pretty much any bird species you might be keeping. Chocolate is a no-no. Anything with onions and garlic in it. Avocados. They're really good for us, but they're not good for your bird. There are a lot of houseplants and garden plants that are poisonous to pets. I'm sure you guys have seen lists of what you can't give your dog or your cat, or you don't want your dog or your cat to chew on. Birds are sometimes sensitive to things that are okay for dogs and cats. So you really need to look them up and see if that particular houseplant or garden plant is safe. And some are okay if your bird chews on them. Some just aren't. Some fruit seeds and pits. So if you give strawberries or blueberries, don't worry about those seeds. But apple seeds, peach pits, anything in the peach kind of family. So nectarines, those have pits. You shouldn't use those. Plums, no plums. Well, plums are okay, but not the pits. Candy or other highly processed people foods. So energy bars, granola bars, candy, potato chips. I'm going to get back to that in just a second, Tony. Mushrooms should be avoided, and all dairy should be avoided. So Tani has a good question. It's about hummingbirds. So later in the semester, we'll talk about feeding wild birds, and we'll talk about what you can and cannot feed wild birds, what you should avoid. For instance, we just found a sick sparrow in our yard. And so my bird feeders are down for 2 weeks because I don't want birds to spread disease in my area. So I removed the bird feeders so so we don't end up with large numbers of birds in our yard right now. But hummingbirds, 1 part sugar, 4 parts water. No food coloring. So if it's red, no. But it's real simple to make this. I mean, I make it with a 1/4 cup of sugar and 1 cup of water. Boil in the microwave. My microwave takes 2 minutes. And it's good to go. And if you have a lot of hummingbirds, you don't usually have that in New England, but if you have a lot of them, you can make batches of hummingbird solution and keep it in the refrigerator for a couple of weeks. You do have to clean your hummingbird feeders regularly and replace the food in them if it's not eaten, because it can grow bacteria. But like I said, we'll talk a lot about that when we talk about wild birds. Any other questions on treats that you can give to your birds or things you should absolutely avoid? Neither of these is a comprehensive list. If I didn't mention it, you'll need to be looking that up. All right, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. And I want to talk a little bit about supplements. So a pelleted diet, you don't need any vitamin supplements or anything like that. If you're feeding seed, if the seeds are fresh seeds and you give diverse treats, how can they have grapes?
I thought you said the other day that you can give birds grapes.
Yes, you can.
Okay, how can they do that? Because I know dogs can't.
Right. Birds are not mammals. You know, dogs are mammals.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what the problem is with grapes and dogs, but
I don't know. I think it's I'll get back to you because I know it's something.
yeah, it's
I know
just,
it's like the digestive system or something.
yeah.
It like passes it down.
Well, whatever it is, it doesn't affect birds the same way. Ah, Kristen says bacteria that grows around the stem. Affecting the kidneys. I don't know anything about that. But certainly birds can certainly eat grapes and be fine just like we can. When we talk about foods and diets, they can vary dramatically between different species. So, you know, dogs can eat things that cats can't and vice versa. We can eat things that dogs can't. Dogs can eat things that we can't. It's just quite diverse. What about raisins? I would avoid raisins with birds. The problem with raisins is that if you swallow them whole, or if your dog or bird swallows them whole, they can swell when they get get exposed to the fluid in your digestive tract. So they can expand in size in the digestive tract. And that can cause bloat, right? This is the same reason if your dog gets into your sourdough starter, or if you're making a yeast bread and the dog gets into the yeast, they need to go to a vet because the yeast will multiply when they're in a warm environment and expand. Exactly. They produce carbon dioxide gas. And again, it can cause bloat. What about nuts for birds? You have to look on a nut by nut basis. Most nuts are perfectly fine for birds. There are a couple of exceptions. I just don't remember which ones off the top of my head. So you have to look at those on a case by case basis. When we talk about parrots, I have a list of nuts in that discussion. I don't have it here because songbirds are so small, they can't open a nut. They wouldn't be able to eat it anyway. So we'll get back to that one, Abigail. Great questions, you guys. You're making me really dig into the brain and trying to remember all of this stuff. Good job. Okay. So if your small songbird is on a seed diet and the seeds are fresh and you give them a lot of treats, they don't need vitamin supplements. How do we know the seeds are fresh? There's a very simple test. Get a wet paper towel, lay some seeds on it and fold it over. So you're just taking a wet paper towel, put your seeds on it, fold it over. And seeds should sprout in a day or two. They should sprout pretty quickly. If they show no sign of growing, within a couple of days, then they're probably older and they're not what we call fresh seeds. This can be a really big problem with seed mixes. A lot of times when you buy them from a pet store, if they don't sell a lot of them, they just leave them sitting on the shelf. And I've gone into pet stores and looked at the seed and it's had dust on it. That's a good sign that seed's been there too long. So fresh seed is important. Another thing pet stores will try and sell you is something called grit. No, your birds do not need to eat tiny little stones. Certainly some wild birds do this to help, because birds don't have teeth, they can't chew. And so they can use the stones to kind of grind up food in their digestive tract. But in captive birds, they get so much, they get plenty of food and they don't need the grit added to their diet. And if they have free access to it, it can compact in their digestive tract. And that can be really dangerous, especially for smaller birds. The one supplement that I do like are Cuttle Bones. These are Cuttle Bones down here. They're going to have a slick, hard side and a soft side. So one side of them, if you scrape it with your fingernail, you'll be able to scrape into it. That's the side that faces the bird. If you have it the other way and have that slick, hard side in the cage, the birds can't get any of the material off of the Cuttle Bone. And the Cuttle Bones are good because they are a excellent source of calcium. And a lot of bird diets don't have enough calcium in them. You will certainly see vitamin supplements for sale in the store. These are not generally recommended. Again, you've got a lot of the same problems you get with old seed. The vitamin supplements may have been there a while. The vitamins break down over time. A lot of these are sold as a liquid and they can grow bacteria. If they're sold as a powder, they'll say put it over the food. Well, the bird's just gonna, when birds eat seeds, they take the outer layer off. They don't eat it. So they're not really taking up the supplement that way. And if they say put it in the water, there you go, bacteria growing again. So unless your bird has a nutritional deficiency and your vet has told you to put it on a vitamin supplement, I really don't recommend these. Birds are more likely to get too much of a vitamin, and too much can lead to things like kidney stones. And yeah, birds can get kidney stones too. And that can be a huge, huge problem for a bird. Any medical issue is more serious in a bird than it would be in a dog or a cat or a person. Any questions on this part? If you want to take a screenshot, this is a good time to do that. Mary, go ahead.
Hi, what's grit? What is that?
It looks a lot like very, very tiny gravel. And it is literally very small stones. and they sell it for birds. Some species of birds in the wild will eat small stones to help with their digestion. And when we talk about internal bird anatomy, I'll explain how those are used. But for captive birds, they're just generally not needed and can be a problem. All right. Cuttle bones, yes, Anna, they are good for their beak too. They help keep the beak in good condition. Absolutely. Cuttle bones, keep the beak in good condition. There we go. Caging. We're going to see, again, a lot of the things we're talking about now, we're going to see over and over. And with caging, bigger is better. With small cage birds, they need to be able to fly. So you have what's called a flight cage. And you want to make sure there's open space for flight. If you've got a parakeet, they don't generally need to fly. When we talk about them, we'll talk about how they like to climb. But when we're talking about canaries and finches, you see how these birds have a perch here and a perch here, and they're going to have to fly to get between them. You want that kind of a setup. Now that's a pretty empty and boring looking cage. Size-wise, that's kind of the minimum. So there needs to be at least 24 inches in any given dimension. And width is more important than height. When we talk about parakeets, height is more important than width. So this is specific to small songbirds. Bar spacing needs to be less than 1/2 of an inch. Oops. As a general rule, your bird should not be able to get its head between the bars. So if my fingers are the bars of a cage and my bird here can get its head through, that's too narrow. You want them close enough together. You know, the bird can get the beak out, that's okay, but not the whole head. Yes, this is another one of my bird class props. I've got a couple of them. And we want metal bars, not wood. Sometimes you can see cute little cages made out of bamboo or wood or something. Those are just way too hard to clean. And the cage should be at eye level. So higher up is better for these guys. Does the flamingo have a name? You know, I haven't named my flamingo. Maybe I'll set up a poll if you guys have suggestions and we can name the flamingo. Okay, everybody wants to name the flamingo. Send me suggestions by in the chat or by email, and I'll set up a poll and we can name it. So with these small songbirds, we want the cage to be a little bit higher. If you have it too low, that you've got like, you're walking past it and they're seeing these feet and it's kind of scary. And these guys are going to fly up to try and get away. So if they get startled, up they go. All right, I'm going to erase this. And then type some more stuff up. So screenshot. Cleanliness. Cleanliness is very, very important for birds. Birds are messy. They throw seed out of the cage. They poop wherever they happen to be, and they poop a good bit for their size. So food and water dishes need to be removable, easily removable, and cleaned daily. If you feed them wet treats like berries, and fruits, those should be removed much quicker. So leave them in there for an hour. Small songbirds cannot be litter trained. Some people have managed to train parrots. I would say paper training rather than litter, because it's usually they're to go to a certain perch that has paper underneath it. But not everybody can do that. And you cannot do that with the smaller ones. So what I like to do for birds is have 2 or 3 sets of bowls or dishes. And then you can pull a set out, put clean in. You can throw these things in your dishwasher, run your dishwasher, and then the next day, just swap them out. And you can certainly use newspaper on the bottom, if you can find newspaper these days, and change it daily. Now, I have a really cool trick for this. What I would do is I would take a stack of paper, cut it so that it was the exact size of the bottom of the cage, and then I'd put about 7 pages in the bottom of the cage. Monday, take off the top sheet. It's dirty, throw it away. You've got a new clean sheet available. Tuesday, take that sheet off, and so on and so forth. Saves time and it works really well. How do I feel about letting them have a room? I feel fantastic about that. Absolutely. Now, it's got to be a safe place. So I want to talk about that. That's a really good point there, Fiona. So let's slip away from this. Make sure you've gotten this note taken, and I'm going to go and we're going to talk about letting birds loose in a room. I'm going to go to the whiteboard so I can write. Free flight, letting the bird loose in the house. So you do have to worry about some things. Setting up a room for them is great, as long as they get some socialization. So if you've got a room and you've got half a dozen zebra finches in there, and you just like to go in and look at them, you can do that. But if you've only got one, you need to be able to interact with it. So you would want them to be in a room you're likely to be in. You also have to worry about things like toilets. They fall in a toilet, they can drown. You have to worry about windows. Just like wild birds can strike your windows, birds in the house can do that too. There are people who will put a screen on the inside of the window, and that really helps prevent the bird from hitting too hard, or close the blinds when the bird's loose. Or you can get these UV stickers. I use those for the outside birds, for the wild songbirds, and they work really well. It's hard for you to see them, but the birds can see them really well until there's a window there. Cushions under the window, generally speaking, it's not the falling to the ground under the window part, but actually striking the window. Because when birds strike a window, they're usually flying full speed. And so they're hitting it really, really hard. Heaters or air conditioning vents on the floor can be places where their little feet can get trapped. And as a general rule, I strongly encourage birds to spend the night in a cage. They can be out during the day, and I've known lots of people who have had birds that they let fly loose during the day and then go into a cage for the night. Yeah, if your bird hits the window, here's the thing. If you've got a canary or a finch and it strikes a window and falls to the ground, they're not going to be badly hurt by hitting the ground. They're going to be badly hurt by hitting the window because they're moving with a lot more speed. They're not going to hit the ground very fast. So you could certainly put cushions down there to prevent that injury. But I would rather them not fly into the window in the first place. Regardless, if they do hit the window, vet time right there. Because they can look all right and still get like a concussion or something. Okay. Just for safety reasons, I really encourage birds to spend the night in a cage. Now, if you've got a free-flighted bird, they might go, why should I go in the cage for the night? So you do need to train the bird to return to the cage. And I've known people who've done lots of different things. What I like to do is whatever kind of treat foods you're giving them, give them access to those right before bed inside their sleeping cage. So strawberries, blueberries, broccoli, you put it inside the cage, let the bird go in. There's training involved, but the bird will go in there because it's getting rewarded for it. And there you go. Then you can put it to bed for the night. Let it out in the morning. Yeah. One of the big reasons I don't have birds right now is because I have cats. And I can't let the birds fly loose with cats in the house for obvious reasons. Yeah. Yes, we do love our cats. Okay, sorry. I had to scritch the one who's sleeping on my desk. Most of your birds were killed. Ooh, not good. Well, that's why we're learning about them, so we can reduce the risk of tragic accidents like that. Okay. Now, how are they with dogs? Oh, it really depends on the dog and the size of the bird. I wouldn't trust a dog around a finch or a canary or even a budgie. But some dogs are relatively safe around, say, a parrot. But it really depends on the dog. Some dogs have very high prey drive and will go after any bird. Other dogs, they'll just sleep. Reptiles. That's a good question. With reptiles, it's going to be kind of a size concern. So if there's a big difference in size, that could be a problem. Either direction. So if you had a small bearded dragon and a parrot, the parrot could injure or kill the small bearded dragon. And it's one of those things that the most dangerous time is early in their relationship. If you have a small bearded dragon, if you have a good sized bearded dragon and you bring home a parrot, either one of them could bite the other one, but if you are careful about the introduction, you can certainly get those two getting along with each other. If you've got a smaller bird and you start with a small bearded dragon, again, you can get them living together. There's always a slim chance of a risk factor there. I mean, that's the case with any animals you put together. If you put dogs and cats together, there's always a chance that one day the dog will try and kill the cat. It's a slim chance once they get to know each other, but there's always that slim, tiny little chance. So cautiously, I would say that you can mix some reptiles with some birds. Faith, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say, like, as a general rule of thumb for introducing any animals is that you always want to start by having them see each other through a closed space, like watching each other through a window or through a glass door. That way they can see each other, but they can't get to each other. And if and if the interaction seems positive, then you can progress to the next stages.
Yeah, that is excellent advice. And scent swapping, birds don't have a strong sense of smell. So, oh my goodness, lots of questions. Birds don't have a strong sense of smell, so scent swapping doesn't work for exposing the bird to a scent. Right now, my office door, we have a screen door on my office because last fall we got new cats, and we have existing cats. We now have 4 cats, and we replaced the normal closed wooden door with the screen door so they could see each other and smell each other through the door. It's going pretty good. They're still not completely comfortable with each other 24 hours a day, but we're getting there. Small mammals. I might be okay with guinea pigs or rabbits with like budgies, cockatiels, parrots, if the parrot's a reasonably well-trained, well-behaved parrot. Things like hamsters and gerbils, forget it. Hamsters and gerbils and mice and rats will eat birds if they can get hold of them. They will bite and kill and eat birds. So those don't work. Yes, Rebecca, feeding them on opposite sides of the door so they associate each other with good things like food. Absolutely. We've discovered what will again? Haley, what will? I've just
What will eat the birds?
the hamsters or the gerbils, mice and rats, those will all eat birds.
Wow,
Yeah. Yeah,
rats are scary.
that is scary. Absolutely. And, you know, they're also known for eating each other on occasion. All right. Whew. Good conversation today. All right. One last thing I want to mention about caging. I've talked about cleanliness. Cage also needs regular washing. And you probably need a good scrub brush. It is dedicated just to the bird cage and perches. You don't want to be using this on your dishes, for example. Save it just for the bird cage. And so it's helpful if your birds can fly free at least part of the time so that you can scrub the cage out really good. You know, ideally once a week. We all know that doesn't really happen. So aim for once a week. And if you miss a week, as long as you don't miss several weeks, you're okay. And you keep the bottom of the cage clean, replace the food dishes, replace perches. If you do all of that, you don't need to clean the cage itself as often, but you do every now and then. I'm going to write that out because I got confused saying it. So if you replace dishes, perches, and the paper at the bottom regularly, then the cage itself needs cleaning every couple of weeks. depending on how many birds you have, what kind, how messy they are, and that kind of stuff. And if you feed the birds seed diet, you will become very, very good friends with your vacuum cleaner because they will throw that crap everywhere. Okay. Going on to the next page now. So a lot of people consider these small songbirds to just strictly be something to look at or to listen to. Small songbirds will stress easily. Getting them comfortable being handled and handling them regularly reduces their stress. Aren't these guys cute? Ideally, if you are getting a canary or a finch, ideally, you should try and get one that was hand raised. This is true for any bird that you get that you want to handle at all. Hand raised are going to be much, much more comfortable with people. If you are like me and all of your birds are secondhand birds, you have to slowly get them used. Oh, what does hand raised mean? Ah, okay. Hand raised means that the person who is breeding them will hand feed them while they're young. So there are a couple of ways this is done. Hang on a second. Nope. Ah! So these are baby canaries. And a person who's breeding canaries can remove the babies from the parents' care. Literally take them out of the cage, put them in a separate enclosure, and then feed them with a syringe or a medicine dropper. So that's one way that you can hand raise them. So they're being fed by your hand. You're picking them up in order to clean the nest. You're literally handling them from the day they hatch. Some people will share duties with the parents. So leave the babies with the parents, but physically handle them and periodically feed them. So you're kind of supplementing what the parents are feeding. So again, they're getting food from hands, they're getting touched all of the time, and they're used to being handled. That's what we mean when we say hand raised. Does that make sense, guys? Okay. Great. Oh, lots of yeses. I like to see that. We will talk about breeding birds. I think that's kind of late in the semester, and we'll talk in more detail about hand rearing at that point. So if they weren't hand reared, the more you get them exposed to your hands, the better. get them used to having your hand in the cage or being touched. Only hold them for a short time at first until they're used to it and they appear to be comfortable being perched on your hand or in your hand. If the bird is not comfortable with your hand, and we're talking about any kind of bird, you're going to need one of these. This is a towel. And I'm going to stop the share so you guys can see me a little better. And this is where we bring Franny, Fuchsia, Bertha, Daphne, Paula, Hamilton, Pinky to play. Figure out a name. So, let's see if I can adjust this. Here she is. I'm going to move those papers. So there we go. You can see her there. Here is a wild miniature flamingo. And I need to trim her nails. I'm going to take this towel, gently cover her, and I will hold her. I'm going to take this off. I'm going to hold her wings next to her body. So my fingers are going to be around her wings, but I'm going to do that through the towel. And then I can pull her feet out and trim her nails. This basic wrapping a bird in a towel technique works with lots of different birds. For finches and canaries, you just need to hold the wings down. And you want the towel covering the head so they can't see you or hear you as well. So that kind of reduces their stress. If we're talking about a parakeet, parakeets bite and it hurts. So we have a slightly different hold for parakeets. And for that hold, you're going to take 2 fingers, put them on either side of the head, not on the eye, just on the back of the head. Their necks are shorter. And then again, hold the wings in place. You don't really have to worry about the feet so much with these small birds. With bigger birds, you do need to support the feet. And we'll get to that. Like I said, I keep saying we'll get to that when we get to parrots, but I'll demonstrate parrots a little bit later. But this is a basic bird hold that works with lots of different birds, small birds that fit in your hand. But like I said, you want to make sure that they're covered. If you're trying to catch a small songbird, if you've got a finch or a canary, and they're in their cage, you can drop the towel over them and they'll freeze for a moment. And that gives you a chance to grab them. If they're loose in the house, you can try and do the same thing, but it's much, much harder. You can also use a very large aquarium net. So something that the rim of the net is bigger than the bird. One of my favorite tricks, here we go, with catching bird, and I'm very good at catching birds. If you are chasing a bird around, trying to corner them, watch their behavior. If they go towards a corner of the room, and ideally a corner of the cage or a corner of the room is going to be easier to catch them in. They go to the corner and then they turn to their left and take off. Okay. Slowly move them back into the corner. You know what they're going to do this time. They went to the left last time and got away. They're going to go to the left again. So you should be able to predict what they're going to do, and that will help you to catch them. Parrots can sometimes figure that one out, but most birds can't. It's one of those things. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And the faster you do it, the better. If you're wearing the bird out, if they're panting, you need to stop and give them a chance to rest and de-stress a little bit before you try again. The other thing you need to be aware of, birds do not have a diaphragm. So we have a diaphragm. If you notice, when you breathe, you can breathe by expanding your belly. You don't have to expand your rib cage at all. You can just breathe from the belly. Birds cannot do that. Their rib cage has to be able to expand. So when you're holding them and you're holding the wings in place, you've got to be careful to make sure the bird can still breathe. So just watch and make sure it is still breathing. And don't squeeze too hard. All right. Now, unfortunately, the way I've got my computer set up, I can't play YouTube videos and have you guys hear it. It seems to have something to do with the microphone that I use. But I want to talk about canary singing. And I would strongly encourage you to go online and find a YouTube video that has a canary singing, because it's really impressive to listen to canaries that really know what they're doing. So why do canaries sing? Why do birds sing? Why is my video off? There we go. Because they are happy to impress females, attract females. Yeah, attracting females is a big part. Oh, Taylor, that's a good idea. Thank you for that suggestion. I will remember to do that in the future. Thank you. Okay, so attracting females, holding down a territory, companionship. All of these things are reasons birds will sing. Here's a fun thing. Birds may or may not open their beak when singing. They can sing. Some birds singing certain notes can sing with their beak closed. Canaries need to hear an adult sing to learn their song. They'll be able to do just kind of they'll be able to sing, but it's not going to be as good if they aren't trained from an adult. And that's why if you go to YouTube, there are lots of videos of canaries singing that last for like 8 hours or something. So you can play it while you're gone to work for the day or out running errands to help your canary learn the song. So untrained birds can sing. It's just not going to be the best possible song. People also show canaries. These are all canaries, and they're show birds. Show canaries can be very, very expensive. Many hundreds of dollars a piece. And they're either going to be bred for appearance or for their song. If they're bred for their song, they're probably going to be kind of bland looking. They're not going to be bright colored. They're not going to have these weird curled feathers. They're not going to be orange or have this hairdo. Showing birds is a very specialized hobby, and it's risky. You take your bird to a show, there's always a chance it's going to get mites or get some contagious disease from the other birds in the show. But if you really want an excellent singing canary, you want to find somebody who breeds singing canaries for shows, because they will have the best singers. Zebra finches. I love zebra finches. They're awesome. I haven't heard of anybody breeding these for shows. They are starting to breed these for lots of different colors. So this is the wild type color. This is the same color you see on wild zebra finches, but the domestics are larger than wild zebra finches. And we can tell the sex because the males have a lot more pattern and color, specifically these orange cheeks. So that orange cheek right there tells you that one is a male. This one doesn't have that orange cheek patch. And these are some of the color patterns that are starting to come out. And you may notice things like this guy's got a black cheek patch instead of an orange. This one, this is the male. I can tell because this is the female. This one's got a lot more pattern and markings in various places, but you can't really see that orange cheek because it's hidden in the other feathers that color. This one, I'm not sure if this is male or female, but it's a very different looking finch. Oh, I do have a note. This is a female. This is one, the color pattern is called penguin. Okay. When we're talking about these birds, most of the species of birds that are kept as pets are naturally very social. Canaries, you'll often find wild canaries in small groups. Zebra finches, you will find them in groups of dozens or hundreds. So they're really, really social animals. In cage situations, the males might fight. They might fight specifically over the females. Oh, that's what I'm doing wrong. Okay. So with these small songbirds, one male, one female works. Two or more of the same sex generally works. One male. Yeah, I'm not going to say one male, two females, because sometimes the females will fight over the males. So generally a 1-to-1 ratio, or having all of them in a cage in the same sex, that works best. They need social interactions. The easiest way to do it is to get multiple birds. I've known people who've mixed species, so you can cage finches and canaries together. I don't know if you guys can read this part of the screen or not. Okay, some of you guys can see it, some of you can't. Okay. Well, let's go to the white bird. White bird. Yeah, a lot depends on how you're looking at this. So one male, one female, good. Finches and canaries together, good. I've known people who've had, for example, finches and cockatiels that would interact outside of the cage, but had separate sleeping cages. So if you want to mix birds that are very different in size, separate sleeping cages, but let them mix during the day can work. And all one sex works. Regardless, these birds need socialization. And we'll see that again when we talk about budgies and when we talk about parrots. It's really, really important for birds. And go back to the other screen. All right. Breeding. So canaries like cup nests, like the second one in this image. Finches like enclosed nests, like these others. Generally speaking, in captivity, these birds are not going to be great at making nests. So we generally provide a structure for them to get started with. A cup nest or an enclosed nest. These are all single use. So you would use them for one breeding season and then toss them in the compost bin or throw them out. What I want you to think about, though, is should you breed? Why do you want to breed? When we think about dogs and cats, we're all very aware of the pet overpopulation problem. Guess what? This is a problem for a lot of captive bird species as well. So some species of bird are overpopulated. What I mean by that is I mean there are more of them than potential homes. Just like with dogs and cats. What do I mean by single use? Once birds have used that nest and raised babies, it needs to be thrown out. You can't get it clean enough to use it for another clutch, another group of babies. I love your question, Faith. No. With a little asterisk. Generally speaking, the surgery required to spay or neuter a bird is very, very difficult. It's an easy surgery in dogs and cats. It is not easy in birds. A lot of birds, when it's not breeding season, their reproductive tissues shrink. And so they're very, very hard to find outside of the breeding season. So you would have to do it during breeding season. And most avian vets will not do it because the chances of infection or the chance the bird dies during surgery are extremely high. Yeah, they don't tolerate anesthesia as well as dogs and cats. A lot of the problem is we have lots of experience treating dogs and cats and doing surgery on them. We don't have that kind of experience with birds. So we don't have anesthesias that we know are safe. We don't have techniques that we know are safe. We don't have lots of people who are trained to do this kind of thing. One of my friends, who's a big help to me when I work on these lectures, is an avian vet, and she has never neutered a bird because the risks of it dying during or shortly after surgery are just so, so high. With parrots, I hate saying this again. We will talk about how to reduce the sex drive in birds. It's easier. Well, there are some behavioral techniques we can use, and there are some hormones that can be used to treat birds. But again, when we're talking small songbirds, they're really just too small to do this kind of stuff with. We can do behavior stuff, but that's kind of it. With small birds, having all birds of one sex works out better because then you don't get that insane sex drive as much. I mean, you still get a little bit, and it's still an issue. That's in our behavior section. When I had the last set of finches I had worked out really well because the male was missing a leg, and the female would position herself and say, "Oh, give me some of that lovin'," and he'd get on top, but he couldn't get in quite the right position. So she felt like she was being mated with, but he wasn't able to actually inseminate her. So it worked out pretty well. It was easy for me to deal with their breeding issues. Yes, and with same-sex pairings, you can reduce unwanted eggs, although some females will lay eggs whether there's a male around or not. But we are out of time and I can't talk about that right now. All right. Any questions before we say goodbye today? You guys have had fabulous questions today. I always love this class. This class has almost always got really good students. All right, In that case, everybody have a good